Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk real quickly about one of your options for geometry next year. So all of you have to take geometry after Algebra 1, and geometry in construction is just going to be one of three options. You can take regular geometry, geometry in construction, or honors geometry. So let's go ahead and talk about this real quick. So this class is basically designed as a two class period combined class. So in one class period, we're going to be focusing on our geometry topics. It's the same exact geometry standards, the same topics you'd learn in a normal geometry class. But the main difference is going to be any chance we get, we're going to be focused on how does this apply to construction. So when we're talking about parallel lines or areas or volumes or triangles, where do we see that in the construction world? And as much as possible, we're going to get you doing some hands-on activities to kind of reinforce those ideas. So when we're talking about the Pythagorean theorem, we're going to build a set of stairs. When we're talking about polygons, we're not just going to draw them on paper, we're going to build one and kind of see how those angles work out. On the construction side, you're going to get 3 trimesters of elective credit. So it's going to be a construction class. We're going to apply what we learned. We're going to build some projects. One of the big differences or the big benefits here is you're actually going to build some projects that are going to stick around, hopefully. And in the past couple of years, we've gotten to build some good additions to the City High campus that you can see around if you go outside and look around. So just as a few examples of how this might be slightly different than kind of your normal class here. In a normal geometry class, you're going to talk about complementary and supplementary angles. In a geometry class, we might talk about where those complementary angles show up on things like a miter saw, where an angle bisector might show up in making a picture frame. We might take a look at, like I said, the Pythagorean theorem and how that applies to a set of stairs when we talk about rise and run. You've talked about slope in Algebra 1. In geometry, when we're talking about the length of that hypotenuse, that triangle. Normal geometry classes, every geometry class talks about congruent triangles. We're going to talk about that in terms of construction, about why those triangles help make a structure strong, and how a proof, in a lot of ways, is a lot like the order of operations for building a structure. Here you can see an example of polygon interior angles and how that might apply to doing something like building a picture frame or a raised flower bed, things like that. And one of the biggest things we talk about in geometry class is trigonometry. And so we'll use trigonometry to do things like find the angle of a roof or how long a diagonal rafter is in the roof structure we're building, for example. And final one I think we got here is just area and volume. Area and volume are going to be big topics in geometry no matter what you do. But in a construction application, how much volume of concrete, how much volume of wood, and that might apply to how much it's going to weigh once we're done with the structure. For area, what's the area of the building we're going to have to paint or put siding on or put drywall on, something like that. Last thing I want to show you is just a couple of projects we've done. So this one was not from this year, but from last year. We built these playhouses. These were really good projects because we actually sold them to staff members and people that were working here around the building. So this one went to Mr. Reynolds there. And you can see the group that built that one from start to finish, painted it, roofed it, did every single thing about that. And then we delivered those to the client. This year we built some sheds. You probably have seen those outside behind the building if you've been out there. We are currently working on some projects with classroom furniture. So all the elementary schools are getting classroom furniture, drawing tables, easels, potting benches or potting tables. And we're building all of those. And you can actually go out and see last year's projects at the elementary schools already. And these will be installed at other elementary schools very shortly. And then our final project last year was this bike shelter. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this out behind the building. You can see the softball field in the background there. But this was our big trimester 3 project. At the beginning of the trimester, this was just grass. And so we did, pretty much all the way through. We did everything except for actually digging out the dirt and pouring this big concrete slab, because that takes longer than a 2-hour class can actually get done. But as you can see, we made all the forms for these concrete pillars. We actually got to pour those. We installed these posts, manufactured those posts. We manufactured our own trusses. We installed all the roof decking. We installed all the shingles. We did the trim, put in these braces, and then the bike club helped by putting in all of these bike racks and the bike fix-it station. And if you're going to look outside the back of the building, out behind Miss Audie's room and Miss Meyer's room and Mr. Cecil's room, you're going to see very shortly another structure pretty similar to this going up for the outdoor classroom at City High School. So hopefully we're able to find some good projects like that and continue this theme of doing some big projects around City High School with this class. So if you're interested in signing up for this class, when you go to register, make sure you're looking for the one that's called Geometry in Construction. If you're having trouble finding it, the course number, I believe, is MAT 122. Your teacher can probably help you find that. And that'll sign you up for the math portion and the construction portion. It's going to automatically put in 2 classes for you. Let's say your schedule is way too full to do that, but you're interested in some of those other construction topics. Last thing I want to suggest here is consider some trimester-long electives down in the shop next year. If you're interested in the construction side, actually building a structure, how does a wall work, things like that, look into the Intro to ACE class. If you're looking for something more small, maybe more independent, something you can actually take home with you, look into our woodworking classes. For some reason, they're called construction materials processing, so I know that's a little bit hard for students that are looking to find a woodworking class. But that's the class you'd sign up for if you wanted to build a small object. Maybe you want to try building a cutting board or a small end table, something like that. So those are some options for you. Thanks a lot for your time, and hopefully I'll see you down in the shop next year.